Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Once you join, please mute your mics, and we'll get started shortly. You can click it. Okay. So virtual webinar reminders. Please, we're recording this, so please keep your microphones muted. If you have any questions or concerns, you can wait till the end, write them down, type them in the chat, and then we'll get to it then. So if you have any questions, Brianna or Carrie can relay that to the speaker, which in this case is Marla. I will let her introduce herself, so click to the next slide. Oh, also, sorry. Robert Morris Psychology presents Let's Talk, How to Build a Professional Resume. Overview. The resume and its purpose. Ways to use your resume in a job search process. Resume Tips 101. The do's and don'ts of a resume. How to tailor your resume. The applicant tracking system, which is online version. Beating the ATS. COVID-related job searching tips, and then questions and resources. Okay, go ahead, Marla.
Hi, guys. My name is Marla Burgess. I am one of the success coaches in the Center for Student Success and Personal Development. I am also student employment coordinator. I do work with a lot of the psych majors. I also am currently working with nuke med, bio, environmental science, health services admin, and education along with psych. So that's kind of a little bit of my areas. And I'm happy to be here today. All right, so just to talk a little bit about the resume and its purpose. So the resume is really going to be that first impression that the employer sees from you. It's meant to be an overview of all of your experiences, certifications, qualifications, special skills that you might possess, things that you've done along the way or while you've been at RMU. And oftentimes this is the first thing that an employer is going to see from you. So you have to find a way to make it unique, stand out, possess those skills that they're looking for. So that's very important to be able to market your skills that you possess. All right, so using the job search process, a lot of times you can use it for networking events in the area. Virtually, you might connect with people via LinkedIn, things like that. And then there's also job fairs in person, online nowadays, especially in this time. Sometimes you'll submit it online through an applicant tracking system. Oftentimes through an applicant tracking system with the larger companies. So you're going to submit that, oftentimes accompanied with a cover letter. Sometimes if you're going to a job interview, you could take a paper copy with you. And then also, even when you're applying to grad school or continuing your education, you do need a resume for that as well. So just another heads up, resume. All right, so a couple quick formatting tips. So the length for the most part for recent college grads, recent college students is going to be one page. As you move along in your career, it may develop into longer documents, so 2-3 pages maybe. But we're going to try to keep it to one page. I am going to go over an example later, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the big things I think for formatting is to just be consistent throughout the entire document. You want to make sure that you're using the same fonts, the same font size. For the fonts, sans serif fonts work the best. Something like Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman, something really simple. And then also, you don't want to go crazy on the italics, the bolding, underlining, those kinds of things. Anything to kind of take away from the actual point of the resume, which is, highlighting your skills. You don't want to focus too much on the other stuff, on the visual aspect of it all. So the acceptable font size is going to be 10 through 12. And then again, consistency, neatness, overall design scheme, just be consistent with that as well. Bullets, paragraphs, where your spacing is throughout the document. And then also, you just want to keep in mind that you want it to be inviting, professional looking. Is there enough white space to make it easy to read and quickly to skim through? Or is it so crammed that, it's going to give somebody a headache looking at it? So those are just some things to think about when you're thinking about the formatting. All right, so a couple do's and don'ts of the resume. Definitely want to check your spelling, grammar, punctuation. This is like one of the biggest things. Oftentimes, I've had employers say that, they see one grammar mistake and it's out. You're off the list already for an interview. And honestly, I think that's one of the simplest things that you can do to fix your resume. Not only do you have spell check, but you have colleagues, you have friends around you, you have classmates, people that can double check your resume for you. So you just want to make sure that you spend a little bit extra time doing that. The next thing is make sure you optimize for applicant tracking systems, ATS. This is super important, especially in today's day and age. Most likely you're going to be applying to a job online, and most likely it's going to be through an ATS system. So just make sure that you're doing things to kind of keep that in the correct format. And I will go a little bit deeper into that in a few minutes. All right, the other good thing to use on your resume is data. Whenever you have numbers or concrete data, very good thing to put on your resume. And I think it's more of a tangible thing for employers to see. And it's not something that, you're just saying about yourself, like a soft skill. It's something that can actually be proven in numbers. So I think if you have anything like that available, it's a very good item to put on your resume. Definitely, as we already mentioned, be consistent with your formatting. And then list professional contact information. This is big. As simple as it may seem, you want to make sure that the contact information you list is professional. Your email is, maybe your school email or just your first last name at gmail.com. Something very simple. You don't want anything that is going to kind of relay any personal details about yourself. And then just in line with that, if you do put a cell phone number down on your resume for contact use, make sure that you have a professional voicemail listed for when they do call you and maybe you aren't able to get to the phone. You want them to know who they're contacting and that you'll get back to them. I had an employer say that they had called the number, it was just a ring back, and it didn't have the student's name or anything on it, so they didn't even leave the message. And you really do not want to miss out on a chance for a job opportunity because you didn't create a good voicemail message. So simple thing, but super important. All right, so a couple don'ts. Never include false information on your resume. Always tell the truth. With how many profiles and how many different things are online about you nowadays, you never want to make up anything on your resume. Absolutely always tell the truth. That is like the number one rule. All right. Do not include any personal, confidential, discriminating information. Just like to mention this, some people have been talking about putting headshots or pictures of themselves on their resume. And in all of my experience talking to employers and being in this role for several years, I would say picture is never the way to go. From an HR standpoint, that is just a train wreck, in other words, because you do not want the decision to be made off of that picture alone. And a lot of times it's not even intentional. It's just a subconscious bias that people have. So you do not want to relay any of that information. The only time that would be acceptable, I'm going to say for maybe like somebody who's in theater, where there's very specific specifications. So keep that in mind. Don't include obvious skills. So those soft skills like communicating, teamwork, those kinds of things. When I say don't include obvious skills, so oftentimes you have a skills section on your resume. And this is the section where you do not want to list these kinds of skills. What you do want to do is bring those skills out in your bullets under your job description. So a little bit different. You are still highlighting those soft skills, but just not in a separate own category. So the skills section is going to be the things that kind of set you apart from other people. And I think that's important to keep in mind there. So next one, do not include references available upon request. So the thing with this is a lot of people think that you should still put that on the bottom of your resume. You really do not need to put that on the bottom of your resume any longer. It's pretty much known that you should have those available. And then on the plus side, you get an extra line to add some more information in, which oftentimes you do need that extra space as you move on. So that saves you one line there. And then don't spend all your time on the design. So oftentimes people are like, oh, I want it to be fancy, catch their attention. That is really not the point of the resume. The resume is to highlight your skills, what you've done, and kind of market yourself. So design really has nothing to do with it, and oftentimes can get you in trouble when it comes to submitting through ATS. So you just have to be careful with the designing of your resume. All right, so a big thing, how to tailor your resume. So, you know, the resume should be tailored for the specific job that you are applying for. So you might have several different working versions of your resume. You might have one that is a cumulative of all the jobs that you've held for general work. For an internship, you might have one that's solely focused on psych courses and experience, certifications, those kinds of things. You might have one for in-person. When you go to an in-person job fair, you might have one that has a little bit of a nice design on it because you know that's going to be in someone's hand. So there are multiple working versions that you should have of your resume at all times. So the job description really helps you to customize your resume. And basically, when you read through that job description, you're going to be able to tell what they're looking for. And if you have those skills, those abilities, you're kind of able to mold your bullets and your job descriptions of the items that you've already completed to kind of match that, if that makes sense. So they kind of mesh together a bit. And then make sure the employer does not miss out on your most marketable assets. So, you know, an employer oftentimes only takes a look at the resume for 10, 15 seconds, and they decide whether or not they want that to move forward. While that is discouraging, definitely important that it's easy for them to read and skim through. And with that being said, the most important thing should be towards the top of your resume. For recent college grads or someone seeking an internship, that education is going to be the one thing that you want up at the top, along with your contact information. And then you can start moving below that with maybe relevant work experience and then other work experience. So it really depends on what kind of job you're applying for on how you're going to order those different categories. But generally speaking, education is always towards the top. All right, so I've already mentioned the applicant tracking systems a couple of times. So just to let you know really what they are. So companies really use these to manage the large amount of applicants that they get. This kind of creates a applicant pool for them to go back to and have a record of. And then also for compliance reasons, to really have everything in a system to keep track of it. So that's really the biggest things that ATS does. And there are multiple different versions, and they're not all the same. So it can get a little bit iffy, but you can also do research on the different applicant tracking systems, which might give you a couple hints on some of the things that can cause issues with your resume. All right, so beating the ATS. Just overview, on average, a corporate job posting receives 250 applications. That's a lot. And of the 250 applications, 4 to 6 will be contacted for an interview. So that's not very many out of that large amount. So how are you going to stand out? And I think that's the biggest thing that you need to worry about. So beating the applicant tracking system, just a couple things that you can do to kind of greater your odds. So the fancy fonts, italics, graphics, tables, any of those kinds of things that you would put into your document. You do not want those there. And the reason is oftentimes it's unable to read those. So basically it would come up as a blank section. So you really have to be careful with that. Headers, footers, you don't want to put any information in there. It may not come over through the ATS. So that's super important, especially for your contact information. You don't want to list that in the header. Couple other things, just the formatting consistency is also key for this too, so that it kind of catches a rhythm on what it's reading. ATS searches for keywords, and that's important. When you're listing your job description, the things that you've done in your internship, your practicum, your part-time job, you want to see if you can kind of mold it to fit with the job description of the one that you're applying to. And by doing that, most likely you're going to find those keywords. Keywords are super important. That's what's going to pull your resume out in this system and kind of give you like a higher score. So that's important to think about the keywords. I think there are a couple resources online. I think JobScan is one of them. And then Wordle is actually also another one. You can copy and paste in a paragraph of information, and it will kind of pick up maybe ones that occur multiple times. So that kind of gives you the idea of what might be important if it's repeated multiple times. So just an idea for that. So definitely focus on the job description when you're applying through ATS. All right, so I'm just gonna pull up this. This is an ATS friendly resume. So just to pull this up a little bit, as you can see, the contact information is at the very top. That's always the first thing that you want on your resume. Name first, then contact information. Your address, not necessarily as important as it may have been in the past. Most likely you will not be getting anything in the mail, but oftentimes it is useful to list that so they know that you're in the area, you're from the area, you're able to make it to work. Next thing you want to do, list the phone number and email. Again, make sure this is professional contact information. And then one of the things that people often put at the top of their resumes under the contact information is an objective. And as you can see, this resume actually does not have one. So objectives are kind of going out of style now, for lack of a better term there. I would say that, you know, if you're applying for a specific job, most likely they know why you're applying. That's not really necessarily something that you have to list. The only time where that may be a good thing to list is when you're looking for something very specific, maybe an intern position or a practicum position, something like that. But generally speaking, for full-time work, that's not really, I mean, they know why you're applying to the job. So on this sample resume, there's actually what we call a heading at the very top. And it is Information Systems Analyst in this example. And the heading is actually the job that you're applying for. And one of the reasons for this is that most likely that is a keyword. So automatically, you've already got one keyword for the ATS on your resume. So just a simple, cool little trick there. Like I had mentioned earlier, education should always be towards the top. That's usually one of the first things that you have up there. You want to make sure that you list the location, spell out the degree and the major, and then you would put your expected grad date along with your GPA. GPAs, if you have a 3.0 or above, that's great to put on, no issue. If you have lower than that, you may want to calculate your degree and your major. Oftentimes that's higher. And if you do not have a 3.0 or above, you may just want to keep in mind that you may have to explain that at some point. What happened to get you to that point? What are you doing to improve? So just be willing to talk about that in the future. All right, so this is not a psych specific resume, but certifications can also definitely be something that you need in the psych field. For this, it's CompTIA, but you know, it might be the child abuse clearance or something like that, or first aid CPR, something to that effect for psych. And you could also list it under skills as the certification section. That might be something that you have there. Or even a counseling session as you move on. Maybe you go to get your master's. So what kind of counseling? Group, behavioral therapy, different things that you could list there. So keep that in mind. The skill sections, the certification sections, those are really tailored to what experience you have. All right, so the next thing listed on here is the work experience. So you can have multiple sections here. You could have like a relevant work experience and then other work experience. But generally, you want to keep it pretty much the same general heading for each section. That is another thing to make sure that it gets through the ATS system okay. Big thing to note about the bullets under the work experience. You want to make sure that you put the location, the job title, and the date, but also you want to list what it is that you did. And by doing this, you're going to list it starting with an action verb. That is the biggest thing for each bullet. Make sure that you start with an action verb and make sure that it's in the correct tense. So is this something that you did, or is this something that you're currently doing? So that's super important to mention there. And as you can see, there are a couple of the data-driven bullets down here. So achieved a 25% increase in the number of qualified candidates, approximately 25 phone calls per week. So these are really tangible evidence of what it is that they've done in this position. So a couple other sections here. You might have a project section. You might have I don't know, you might have like a practicum section or an internship section. Again, this really depends on your personal experience. Relevant courses may be something that you decide to add on your resume if you have the space. I definitely recommend this for a space filler. If there's something else that you can put in the resume, I would do it. The only time that I would focus on relevant courses would be maybe if it was a higher level learning course that not everybody got the chance to take. It kind of set you apart. I would list it then. But otherwise, I would definitely look at the courses section more as a space filler than anything. And then that last section there is an activities section. You do not have to list the explanation of some of these, okay? So if you're on the football team, everybody knows what that is. But something like top secret colonials, not everybody is gonna know what that is. So a small explanation there might be a good idea. Activities, it could be a volunteer section instead. You might have, I mean, these last columns here could be a little bit interchangeable, depending on how relevant it is to your major or what it is that you're looking for. And as you can see, this resume, oh, you're fine. It was completely formatted. Equally, you know, you have the right amount of white space in between each category. It's easy to read. It's easy to skim through. You know, you can easily see between each category where the next one starts. So typically, you know, an employer looking at this could spend 15 seconds and get a good idea about your experience. So that's super important. Sorry, I went back to that. All right, so just a couple more things that I wanted to mention before we get into questions. You know, COVID-19 job searching, what can you do during this time? My biggest recommendation is to build up your social media presence because a lot of people are meeting virtually. So anything where you can build those connections online is going to be a good thing. LinkedIn is a great one. Handshake is through RMU. So the employers that connect with you through Handshake are specifically looking at RMU students. So that's a great profile to have. Prepare yourself for the virtual and phone interviews. It's almost inevitable that that's what is going to be coming your way. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. And then be open to exploring different work opportunities. Remote work might be something that you may have to go into, considering what's going on in today's world. So just keep an open mind, explore other opportunities. Attend any kind of virtual events that you can. There's networking events, there's a lot of virtual career fairs coming up. And oftentimes these even get you one-on-one, which you may not necessarily get when you're walking around a full room at a job fair. So there are some benefits to this as well. And then you always want to expand your network. So do this by connecting with people, making meetings through the social media platforms. And then just conduct informational interviews. So really talk to people, see what they're doing, explore, see what different areas you can move into. I think that's super important. And actually, that may not be something that you may normally have time for, but now we do. So I think that that's important. And then also you want to make sure that you increase your marketability. So while you have this time, while you're searching, any kind of certifications, skills that you can gain, volunteer work that you can participate in, anything that you can do to help build your resume at this time, definitely recommend it. All right, guys, do you have any questions?
Sure. We'll go ahead and open it up. I know myself, I have a couple questions. Bree, do you have questions as well?
I do.
Okay. So my first question would be going back to the resume and kind of education and everything like that. I know a lot of the times we hear CVs associated with resumes and used interchangeably. Can you give a better example of kind of the differences between the two?
Yes. Very good question. So oftentimes in an educational setting, you do hear CVs, also in psych. So very good question. So the resume is going to be kind of like that short one-pager to capture your experience. Now the CV is often multiple pages. This includes everything that you've ever done, pretty much. So you can include, you know, on your resume, while you may only go back to your college years, on a CV, you may go back to your high school years because it's a full account of everything. So it can get a bit lengthy, but oftentimes it is used in education, like research papers are a big aspect on there, publications, those kinds of things. So that's really the main difference between the two, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So my question kind of pertains to, I guess, the type of information or content on a resume. So when should you stop using information for high school for those who are freshmen or sophomores? And then my second follow-up question would be, when do you stop using information from college, like the undergrad years, say you're moving into your graduate school programs or a doc program?
Sure. So I think by junior year for undergrads, I'm thinking that high school stuff should hopefully fall off by then. You should be having enough, you know, experiences on your college campus by then that you could fill it up. Clubs, activities, organizations, internships, those kinds of things. And then and your doctorate, you're always going to include the undergrad education, but maybe not necessarily those activities and the things that you've done there. You might include publications, research, those kinds of things more than you would cheerleading or psych club, something like that. So I would say probably after the first year, I think that is a good time for the grad. That way you can start adding the other things in and keeping it to one page that are more relevant to what it is that you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For our students who are new to the resume building and kind of creating a sense of what they want to put on there and everything like that, once they create a rough draft of a resume, where can they send it to get that like professional feedback from our RMU facilities?
Absolutely. Good question. So the Center for Student Success, we have 7 different success coaches, and they all specialize in a specific area. So we are located 2nd floor of Nicholson, right by the student mailroom down from PNC cafeteria. So that would be the office that you would go to get your resume reviewed.
Okay, thank you so much.
This is kind of a follow-up to that one. So now that there have been changes to Robert Morris, can you please tell and explain that to them, like where they should go for resumes versus the practicum internship experience and how your roles have changed?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So we are now in the Center for Student Success and Personal Development. So not only do we kind of help on the academic aspect, helping to add drop classes, that type of thing, look at your check sheet, we also help to prepare you for the job search. So interview prep, resume reviews, cover letter reviews, preparing for grad school. Those are the kind of things that you would go to your success coach for. Now, when it comes to seeking a specific employer for your practicum, your internship, or full-time work, you're going to go to the Career and Professional Development Center for that. And they are located in Benjamin Rush Center still.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know at the end of our presentation, we have a few resources. I'm going to go ahead and go to that page now. Can you give a brief description of what the students can expect to find in each of those links or resource areas?
Absolutely. So the resume writing resources is actually a couple examples, and then there is a tip sheet that gives you a couple resources. There's a table of different action verbs that you can use, which is incredibly useful because oftentimes you do not want to use repetitive action verbs there. And then also tells you a little bit more about ATS. So those are just some things in there. I believe there's maybe 6 or 7 multiple examples of different resumes. So you can get an idea of some different styles or formats that might be used. Big Interview is an outside company that we work with, and super cool because you're able to record yourself answering questions and go back and kind of critique yourself. Not only can you do that with yourself, but you could submit it and go over it with your success coach. So super helpful resource when you're getting ready for an interview. You're really able to look at yourself and see, what you're going to look like to somebody else. And even now, I think with everything turning virtual, it's even more useful, just because not being used to being virtual all the time, you definitely need to get some experience with that again if you have it. Vault is another outside company that we work with. It has a job database. It has a couple other tip sheets, different articles, blogs on there that you can read through. And then there's really a lot of data on different occupations, industries, just to get an idea of different areas that you can move into and learn more about them, basically. And then the job searching during COVID-19 tip sheet just dives deeper into what we had mentioned earlier, but also provides a lot of different websites and other resources that were used for people job searching during this time. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and go out of the presentation. Thank you so much, Marla, for joining us today. We really do appreciate your time. I think you talked about a lot of really helpful things for our students, whether you're going into undergrad, looking for grad schools, practicums, especially during COVID. I think those points were really, really helpful. And hopefully our students kind of took some main messages away and got a better understanding of where they can have resources, what to expect, and kind of what to look forward to putting on there. I don't have any more questions. Bree, if you do, go ahead.
I do not, but I also wanted to thank you. I just wanted to say that what's the best way to contact you if students need to reach out? Email, phone number?
Yes, absolutely. Email, phone number. Often I am available on Google Hangouts, Google Meet. So all of that is a good way to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.